So I'm told we still have to send this out.
We still got to hear back.
So I'm told we still have to send this out.
We still got to hear back. Wait until exactly 7:30. That's what we advertised, right? Even though we're going to start and finish in one swift sweep. Wait until exactly 7:30. That's what we advertised, right? Even though we're going to start and finish in one swift sweep. Call the meeting of Tabernacle Township to order. Flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunshine notice. This meeting is called pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting of March 13, 2017 was included in the list of notices sent to the Central Record, Burlington County Times, and Courier Post. Posted on the bulletin board of the town hall and has remained continuously posted as required notice under the statute. In addition, a copy of this notice has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. We have roll call. Mr. Barton.
Present.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Francis.
Here.
Mr. Yates.
Here.
Mayor Lee. Thank you.
Okay, I want to open the meeting up for public comment on agenda items only. We're going to limit you to 3 minutes, so please raise your hand. Stewart.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Yates. Good evening, committee members. I have comments on 2 items. Stuart Brooks, old business and new business. Regarding the municipal budget, a few items. The road improvement program was announced, and there were roughly half a dozen local roads that were indicated for improvement. I've traveled those roads, and compared to the lower end of Carranza Road, they're in excellent condition. The lower end of Carranza Road is potholes on potholes on potholes, or patches on patches on patches, and in many cases, there's a breach in the top surface that goes all the way down to the base. And I would ask that Carranza Road, Lower Carranza Road, be put on the list to be improved. It's a dangerous condition. It's a narrow road. There are drainage ditches on both sides of much of it. There are DOT programs that could fund it, either the infrastructure grant program or the regular program. I understand there might be jurisdictional problems, but we've overcome jurisdictional problems on Tuckerton Road regarding Shamon. It's a bad, dangerous situation that really needs to be addressed. Secondly, I was pleased to hear that the township is considering the sale of excess property or property on the tax rolls. It's a good source of revenue, and if the township has no need for those properties, there's no public use for them, it would make sense to sell them to interested parties. In many cases, though, I understand that properties are likely to be landlocked, and I think the township committee would be wise to consider guidelines for how to dispose of properties. For instance, if there's landlocked property, it should first be offered at the appropriate price to adjacent property owners. Otherwise, there's no way for anyone to maintain those properties, and property maintenance is just as important as getting it off the tax rolls, getting taxes in. If a property can't be maintained, especially if it's forest, it just stays a forest fire hazard, and that's a danger. And I know that last year, Sean Judy was interested in land, and well, I believe the committee didn't take any action on it, and that would be an example of property that is saleable and would be maintained by someone. And both the sale and the maintenance are important. Third, there was a chart that was enclosed in the information on the website regarding the budget, and there's a table in there that lists average assessment and the cost of services for emergency management, rescue, fire, court, trash collection, et cetera, et cetera. And it gives an assessed value. It looks like it's the cost for a property that's assessed at $160,000, a property that's assessed at $340,000, and what I assume is an average assessment of $263,744. But it's not clear what that chart is or what the valuation $263,744 is, why that's significant. I'd like you to explain that as you get into your discussion tonight. I'd also like to know how many properties we're talking about if that is an average assessment. One would think that if one multiplies that number of properties by the numbers indicated for each service, that one would come up with a relevant number.
Stuart, your time has been up for over a minute now. We will take your comments into consideration. If we can answer them tonight, we will. If not, we definitely will have an answer for it.
May I have 30 seconds more to ask about the other item on the agenda, the new business, the Public Works building? I didn't see mention of that in the master plan, nor did I see mention of that in the working document that the open space committee put together. I'd like to know more about the program that you propose for that and how we get from those beginnings to what seems to be a $500,000 expenditure for property and what seems to be $2.5 million for a building in 2019. And if you could discuss that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Brooks. Stuart took up a lot of your time, you do know that.
Very funny. Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. Since Mr. Brooks asked about the table on page 2 in the documents that you put up on the web, I'm not going to repeat them. Hopefully you'll address the issues, because the table itself in and of itself doesn't make any sense. The other, I have a whole bunch of, let me put it this way, I have a whole bunch of questions about the budget now. Are you just going to be discussing this, or are you going to give people a chance to talk about these, ask these questions in that
We plan on
portion?
introducing that tonight. Whether anyone from the committee, if you remember at the last meeting, I asked everybody to take it home, review it, and if you have any concerns, bring it bring those back with you when we introduce it so that we can have some discussion. And yes, we did agree that we will be listening to the public. The public hearing date is on 4/27/17.
But as far as after your discussion,
Oh, I'm sorry, 4/24, I'm sorry,
Okay.
4/24/17.
okay, as far as your discussion, are you, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, do you want questions asked now prior to the discussion that you're going to have? Or do you want to give people an opportunity to ask questions in that section of old business? Because I can,
We can-
go ahead.
I'll take that in consideration.
Well, it's either a yes or no. I mean,
No, I'll take it in consideration. I need to think about it for a little bit.
okay, well, because I have a whole series of questions, and I guess what I'll do is I'll wait until the second public comment after you folks discuss the budget to ask these questions. I guess at this point, the only thing I'd like to hear is, it's unclear, based on that narrative, what the increase for, I'm losing my, what the salary increase for staff is. It wasn't absolutely clear, so if you would address that in your discussion, that would be appreciated. And also, I'd just like to reiterate Mr. Brooks's comments about the road, the Carranza Road. It's a disaster. And I think everybody here knows what a disaster it is. And I have to ask why it's not being addressed, why that road is not being addressed, because it is so dangerous. And it's not, it can't just be volume, because there actually is a lot of volume on the road. And probably more than some of the roads that have been identified in that list that was presented at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago. So I'd like you to address that issue as to why Carranza Road isn't being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Hearing none, I'm going to close it to the public. Do I have a motion to pay the bills? I have a motion by Mrs. Brown. Second. Second by Mr. Barton. Have a roll call.
Mr. Bart?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, old business. As Mr. and Mrs. Brooks both have stated, the discussion will be the municipal budget. Do I need to introduce that, Doug? Or Peter, before we discuss, or can we just take discussion and then introduce another resolution?
I think we can just discuss and then have an introduction after you.
Yeah, and once it's introduced, then you'll list it for public hearing, as you've already referenced, and then you'll have your public hearing. So you can have discussion on its introduction.
Has everyone had an opportunity to review this, or do we need more time?
The only change that was made, is, as far as I understand from the initial one, was the addition of some money for a potential emergency services supervisor of some kind or another.
That is correct. The total budget didn't change. We moved some money around, moved it into emergency management salary and wages for a public safety director or supervisor, whatever title you choose on it. That was the money that was spoken by the mayor at the first budget meeting.
And
Other than that, it has remained the same.
could maybe you or Terry also explain the actual impact for the average homeowner in the township? I mean, the rate is going to go up a little bit, I assume, what I've seen, or how's that going to work out?
Yeah, that's that, on the first page there, just the 263,744 that you had mentioned, that's an average.
Right.
that we get from the assessor. Then the 160 was just a number we picked lower, and the 340 was a number higher. So that's what the
Okay.
increase. Then that's just a local purpose tax increase.
Right.
That's on there.
Joe, do you have anything at the present time?
Yeah, Perry, I wanted to talk about the document that you put together and gave to us. In that document, you talk about the fire commission's budget went from $60,000 to $106,500. How much have we received each of the 3 years in tax revenue that came from the fire district? And what's the difference between that number and this number?
What's the difference between the?
This year, if we were to take the percentage from the fire district, what would that number be versus the $106,500 that the fire company's asking for?
What was their budget number?
No, let me rephrase it. When we dissolved the fire district, that percentage of tax came to this committee each of the last 2 years and again this year. My question is, what is that number? How much in tax did we get from the fire district?
Okay. In 2014, their budget was $479,626. When we took it in 15, we reduced it by $65,800 to leave us $413,826. $413,826. In 2016, we reduced the budget by $245,619, of which $97,963 were reduced out of the portion of the fire budget, leaving them a budget of $315,863. Inside our budget, not only is what you see as the $90,000 to the contribution to the fire company and the $70,000, what was it last year? $70,003 that was spent on their line item. But you have in the budget, you have $20,000 set aside in the insurance budget for the fire company, both for the JIF and their BSIS health and safety insurance contribution. You have $7,000 put aside in engineering. You have a truck payment of $59,200 set aside after the $108,000 was put aside for the first year's down payment. Last year you had a supplemental grant of $2626 that came in the budget and went out to them. That will no longer happen because it's designated now only for fire districts, not for fire companies. So that will go away. You had an item in buildings and grounds of $30,000 that was set aside out of their budget for repairs to both the firehouse buildings. You had $3,000 set aside for plumbing and heating repairs. You had a little over $2,000 for electrical. You had $1,200 in additional audit expenses, and you had down payment for the money set aside in the capital budget of $6,500, and you had LoSAP last year, which was budgeted for $30,000, and only $24,037 was spent. So that goes back up to your $315,816 that was in there. So we've cut essentially a little under 3 cents out of the 7 cents that was originally in there, in the cuts that we've made in the 2 years afterwards. The original year was a little higher for LoSAP. We had budgeted 48. The money that wasn't spent goes back into surplus, the same as every other line item in our departments go back. If we don't spend it, it goes back into surplus to help a year down the road in the 2018 budget this year. Such. So that's where that money is allotted and where it goes to. They had to transfer, we had budgeted $60,000 last year for their expenses, they spent $70,000. We had transferred in November to pay for those expenses. If you'll remember, there was some discussion over the lights for 16 because we had a budget issue. I had a hold for a month or so while we could transfer money in. So that's how it's worked up till now.
Okay, because when I look at this 227 document, 17, I see the $90,000 for the fire company under 260-29A, and then I see their O&M at $106,500 for a total of $196,500. And so where are the other numbers at in here?
They're just absorbed into the departments that they own. When we do any repairs in the building, it doesn't come out of the fire budget. It comes out of buildings and grounds. So there's money set aside in those budgets for those expenses. It's not earmarked specifically. Our audit went up $1,200 since we've taken on them. The first year it was higher because we had to do an audit for the district after it was closed. But after that, we put just a small amount in there towards what our overall budget expenses are. So I earmark each department expenses as their expenses, but we have some community expenses, buildings and grounds. It's like postage. There isn't a lot of postage money to each department, but it comes out of we sort of group it together and draw from all the departments. So that's how it's been absorbed into the budget.
Okay. I would suggest for future years to have a better idea of where these funds go, that they be allocated to each of the departments, because I suspect the same is true for the emergency services building. That money's also in a different bucket, right? It's in that buildings and grounds?
I have very few expenses at there, but yes, it would be in the buildings and grounds, and it is in our utilities under fuel for the buildings, for that building. We pay the natural gas for that building. The squad pays the electric, so I don't have any electric expenses in there. So.
Under the fire company, I know Chief Smith gave you a budget. Does this get him everything he needs for 2017?
It appears to get him everything he needs, not everything he wants.
And what are some of the things he wants that he's not?
He would like to have a chief's vehicle this year because we did not, it was originally earmarked for this year. Given that we were going to use the capital budget last year, we did not, so it's moved everybody back. Some of it the grant match I'm using out of the capital budget. So that's not a line item that he had included before for $20,000. If they get the SCBA grant, we have money set aside to purchase the SCBA. We would use it out of that money rather than create another $20,000 line item in the budget.
Okay, Doug, how do we make a determination when a vehicle is no longer has value in it, and that it becomes a detriment to the organization rather than an asset?
Based on the expenses you have going up to that point, and usually there's a catastrophic failure, and is the vehicle worth that cost to repair that catastrophic failure, and how many years service do we get available after that?
I mean, does it go to a shop and they determine that the mileage and the condition of the truck and how long it'll last? Will it last another year? Will it make it this year? Will it make it 3 years? Or is it just that maybe somebody would like to have a new truck? I don't know.
It's determined on what the life expectancy is out of the repair, based on what other repairs have been made in its life. I work in conjunction with Hainesport to talk about where we are and what other expenses they see in the future of it. I also have about 35 years' experience in the trucking industry, and have done this both in the trucking business and the agricultural business and for the township for at least 29 years.
So with the age and the mileage on that truck, you comfortable with that truck?
I'm comfortable with that truck right now. In fact, the intended use is not to sell it, is to move it to a fire police vehicle. It does not have a lot of mileage, it has hours. That's the determining factor really for a piece of fire equipment and actually for public works equipment, is the mileage is never great. So when you say, oh, it only has 60,000 miles on it, how many hours does it have? That's what we're looking at.
Does it have an hour meter on it, or will a future vehicle have an hour meter on it so you can?
Ours do, the fire trucks do. I'm not sure that this one does, no.
Okay.
It's something that we would consider.
Okay. So some of the things I see with the budget, what I see here, I know Mr. Brooks asked what the percentage for salary increases, and what I see is a 3% increase, is that correct?
Actually, it should be a 2%.
2, now I do the math between each of these columns between 16 and 17, and I come up with 3%, not 2%.
From the adopted or the expended?
From the expended?
It should be adopted.
Okay, adopted. Okay, it's a 2%.
2%. We budget for a 27-week period. It happen every 4 to 5 years. And then when we have a 26-week period,
Okay.
salaries are less.
So Doug, I have some questions. I'm just going to go right through this page by page.
Okay.
Office furniture, we went from 1,500 to 4,000. What are we buying additional this year? I know last year we had a lot of computer equipment.
I'm sorry, but what number is that?
This would be office furniture and equipment.
Under administrative?
We went from 1,500 to 4,000.
We had, in the preliminary stuff that we've worked with the architect, we had talked about enclosing the deputy clerk receptionist area, and that furniture won't work in that, so we anticipate having to purchase furniture for that.
Okay. And then our computer maintenance under administration goes from 7,000 to 12,000?
That was initially done because we anticipated doing the server in this year's budget. Unfortunately, it had more problems sooner than we anticipated, and we did it at the tail end of last year.
Okay. Let's jump over to,
But we expect, that'll probably come out of there, but we expect additional in the construction office this year.
let's see. Under legal, we adopted and encumbered substantially less. We're adopting the same amount, which is about $13,000 in what we encumbered in 2016, which 16 was 20,000 more encumbered than it was 15. What do you see going up in legal that we would need 95 again in that?
Well, we anticipate some additional sales of property, which will have some legal.
Okay.
We anticipate possibly the purchase of a property, which will have some legal.
I'm sorry, what was that property though?
Possibility of a purchase of property.
Okay.
And we anticipate additional litigation on abandoned properties this year.
Okay. And of the property sales, Can you get us a list of all the property we have so this committee can take a look at it
Yes, I can.
and decide once and for all what property we need and what property can be sold?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Doug, this is under group insurance plan,
Okay.
which is 220-200.
Okay.
And we're proposing 336,000. What's going up in the insurance world that,
Actually, our health insurance has stayed relatively the same, actually went down slightly,
okay,
but we have 2 retirees, which we have coverage for. That is included in there.
okay, thank you. Is that the same thing with dental going up?
Dental, we stayed the same, adopted to adopted. We have some new employees that we anticipate going from single coverage to family, but we've included that in there for.
Do we get them a dental exam before we hire? Okay, and of course, the emergency management committee, Franzen brought up, that's the additional that he spoke about, I see.
Yes.
And then, you know, I see the increases in the fire department. It looks like they're much more in training, much more in clothing.
We have fallen behind in replacement of turnout gear, and we anticipate trying to get caught up this year with purchase of 6 sets of gear.
Okay, good. Good. Under your public works, small equipment, Doug, what are your small equipment purchase and your heavy equipment repairs that you're seeing?
Small equipment purchases.
Yeah. It's not much, it's only $10,000.
They range anything from chainsaws to smaller mowers.
Okay. And your heavy equipment, is that just everyday O&M that historically follows your equipment?
We anticipate this year doing some work on the grader.
Okay.
We're doing some of it ourselves and some of it we're farming out.
Uh, 305-200, that's our solid waste collection.
That's correct.
Other than any new developments coming in, our contract is pretty solid on that, isn't it? Isn't that a fixed bid?
It goes up each year slightly, but it does go up, and also the rate at the county for disposal, because that's not only collection, that's disposal.
Okay.
It may change, and there's also some allowance in there for what we need to do with dumpsters, as far as if we have tear downs or anything like that.
Okay. Good, thank you. Under buildings and grounds, fencing and electrical. What are we doing electrical?
Electrical, we expect to have some issues at the firehouse with the generator. That room has settled, and we'd like to move the generator outside, or get a generator that is capable of being set outside. And all that electrical would have to be redone in there to make the connections.
Is that generator, what fuel source is that?
That's diesel. That was the generator that used to be at the Olson Middle School. When they decommissioned it, we were originally going to put it in Public Works, and the fire company at the time, this generator expired, and we gave that to them years ago. They shoehorned it in the room. It's much larger than our old generator. They got it in there, but the vibration on that and some of the foundation work underneath has allowed that to settle.
Mhm.
So we anticipate that being moved sometime this year.
So if we move that generator, have you done an assessment of the age and the hours on that generator? Is it,
I'm looking to probably replace it with a generator similar to what we have in the emergency services building.
would you switch that to natural gas? Because there is natural gas in the building.
I'd have to look at what the requirements are from the DEP for reporting on that. They're much more stringent for natural gas than they are for diesel. But yes, that would be my inclination to try to get to natural gas, because I would get away from the tank setup.
And you would think that natural gas would burn cleaner than the diesel, that from an permit standpoint, that the EPA would be favorable of it.
I have to look at what the differences are. There's differences in reporting, there's differences in the requirements, and there's differences in the limitation of size.
Yeah, I would just suggest that if we have to go through the expense of moving that we seriously look at natural gas, or at least setting it up so if it ever had to be changed again, it could be changed over to natural gas without having to.
That would
do
be my
much
first
over.
choice, but I would have to look at the two
good.
options.
Thank you. Let's see. Building repairs, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
We only spent around 8 last year, but you have 30 in the budget, which is what you had in the budget the previous year. What do you, is this just O&M problems, or do you have any roofs or siding or windows or doors or?
That includes all of our buildings. We have some work to do in the Pepper House. We have some work to do, depending on what we do with the community center. There's roof and insulation work to do down there. So that's sort of where everything is that we have the option to do that.
And I see you have the increase in the LoSAP program. That's that 30-419-291. The length of service award program.
Okay. Yes. So we anticipate this year having more than we did last year. We have more active
Contingency. Okay, that's all I had, Mr. Kramer.
Thank you.
Mr. Franzen, you have any other questions? Yep. Mrs. Brown?
No, Joe covered everything.
Now, I do have a couple questions. One is to touch base on what Mr. Barton said, or asked. The question was the percentage of the salary increase to the staff. And I do believe you quoted 2%, but the paperwork is all reflecting 1.37%.
That's the overall. We have some breakage from people retiring versus the salaries we're paying and anticipate paying. So we have some areas where public works won't be as expensive as it was before, against the 2 retirees that had 25 and 35 years, 40 years of service.
I'm just, what I'm getting at is I just don't want it to be misleading to the public, because at this meeting we're saying 2%, but the paperwork that we're putting out is saying 1.37.
Which is what the total salary increase is, the salary budgets are, is going up.
Okay. And one of the recommendations that I have to reduce the budget would be the contribution of $35,000 to the squad. I think it's at a point where the squad has proven that they're self-sufficient with the amount of money that they're being able to generate. So I'm making a recommendation that we reduce that line item to 0.
That means that you will expect your residents to pick up balance billing, and there will be no charity care. Last year, we spent just on that $35,098.89, I believe. So the only thing that's in that budget right now is just to cover the anticipated charity care and balance billing for the residents of Tabernacle Township.
So how can we get around that?
Not a lot of ways to get around that if that's what you want. Either say you don't want to pay it and they balance bill and there's no charity care, or
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the squad said they would not balance bill the residents.
as part of the federal law to make that available, then we have an agreement to match that number. We used to be higher. We've done it to exactly what the billing number is now.
What is our payment, our bond payment on the bill?
For that building,
69, that's
We'll throw a way around this stuff. I mean, I have nothing against the squad. They do a fantastic job, as I will continue to say. But when they're able to produce a revenue, and the taxpayer is providing quite a bit, I'm trying to make this fair.
well, once the contract is signed, you will lose the cost of fuel. What you have left is cost of the building, which is our building, which is divided roughly in half with emergency management and the CERT. The CERT and emergency management uses predominantly the administrative side with a little bit of the garage side. Squad uses the majority of the garage side with a little bit of the administration side. The Public Works Department, the squad, school, it's available to the fire company, although I don't think they use it very much, is the wash bay. So it is a multi-use facility that the voters voted to fund.
Correct.
So you have that availability, which would be about $8,000 roughly a year in fuel costs. And that was part of the agreement that has not been voted on yet. So there's where we pick up some more savings in that. But the $35,000 is this committee's commitment to the residents of Tabernacle that because they are paying that bill for the facility, and they're paying that they won't be balance billed, but only their insurance is the coverage, which they pay for whether they use it or not. Well, there's automotive insurance or health insurance. So that was the original concept when they did that, so they didn't have to balance bill. Some neighboring communities balance bill, and some neighboring communities balance bill our residents when they do the transportation. So that was what the intent was to provide that coverage to the residents of Tabernacle.
So that's the drop bottom number for you, Tom.
If it's less, that's all we pay. If it's more, that's all we pay. It's set up in the new contract, and it's been, what we did last year was slightly more than 35,000. So we took the balance out. Unanticipated expense. If the contract signed and it's less, that's all there will be, and it will only be taken out as we're billed for it.
And that being said, the OIG's opinion would require you to pay them an amount that's roughly equivalent, a reasonable good faith estimate. So it has to have some bearing to reality. So what Doug is saying is that they, based on historic numbers, approximately this amount has been forgiven by not balance billing, correct? And that's based on historic data, so it's just not a guesstimate. It's rationally related to real world expectations.
They give us a run sheet from October to October, so we have it for the end of the year.
And so the OIG opinion says, in order for them not to be balance billed, the community has to make that contribution towards them so that it's not a kickback to the community by the company saying, well, use our service and we won't balance bill you. And so the OIG says it's not a kickback because as a taxpayer, they make approximately that contribution to the squad on an annual basis. So there's no monkey business going on. Nobody's forgiving balance billing in order to be the designated provider. So that number has to be reasonably equated to what the actual historic balance billing has been and adjusted annually to the extent that there's any disparity. Right, Kathy?
Right.
Joe, can I weigh in on this?
Sure you can.
The mayor and deputy mayor did a report on emergency services, and they presented it to the public, and we heard testimony from emergency services and from the public, but one of the things we did not do, it never came to this committee for discussion, and so that's an open item as along with the use agreement of the building. And I think I understand where you're going with this, Joe, is that the squad has a healthy revenue stream, and because of the law, we give them $35,000 not to balance bill. Yet they're in a building that they legitimately don't pay rent on, that we have a bond on, that the taxpayers pick up the tab for. And I would like to see income come in for the use of that building myself, because they can't do their operation without the building, and they can't bill for the billing without having the building to operate out of. And since they've been doing the billing, they've been buying equipment, doing some good things. What concerns me is the equipment is not in the name of Tabernacle Township, it's in the name of the squad, and someday we're going to have a squad that's going to own all the equipment, and we're going to own the building. And the taxpayers are paying for that building. So I think it's a healthy discussion to have. I would be in favor of leaving this in there and continue the discussion about the services and come to an agreement with the squad, whatever that is. And there's several options. We can ask them to balance bill and not give them the $35,000. The township could take over the building itself because it's taxpayers' money. It could come to the township, and the township could fully fund everything like it did before those funds were built and they had that revenue stream. The township could go out to bid and make it fair and competitive for the use of the building. Or maybe there's a way we can charge them right for the building in that use agreement, which would cover the cost of the bond. So there's some of the options that I see that we could have a healthy discussion on at some time. And sometime in the near future, we have to come up with an agreement with them, because right now they're using a building without legitimate.
Yeah, without a contract.
They have a contract with the use of the building, and they have an ordinance to provide the service. You wanted to provide them with a contract to provide the service in addition, or an agreement.
Right, I mean, put them on the same playing field as
As
the fire department.
as this has been both
Right.
called an agreement and a contract, it's essentially an agreement. Not to replace the ordinance, but in addition to the ordinance.
Right.
So that's what they have, but they do have an agreement for the use of the building. That was done a few years ago.
And so does the fire.
Fire company has that.
Excuse me?
Can I add a little?
Sure.
Okay. I heard both of what you're saying, and I get it. The only thing I'm looking at is the squad did have a building that they owned outright themselves, which they turned over to the township. So we basically made them homeless. And when they gave it to us, we made the agreement that they would go into that building and be able to operate it. You remember, Joe and Rick? I'm not sure.
No, I understand.
Yeah. So now to say that they're doing it and for nothing, in theory, they gave us money up front when they gave us the building. So that's what I'm looking at, because I go back a little bit. And I remember these things, and to say that it's not fair, the taxpayers also paid for the building that the fire company's in. Not, so there was a bond referendum on that, and that was paid for by the taxpayers, and we have a bond referendum on the building that they're in. The difference is, they gave us their property, so they have nowhere to go, because we said, go in there, we're not gonna kick you out, here's a place, and we'll use this for a community center. So that's what I'm kinda looking at.
Well, I understand what you're saying, where you're coming from, but I mean, if I can just build back into that, if you remember, that building was too small for them, and to make the
Correct.
repairs was too costly.
Absolutely.
For the current day equipment. Okay,
Absolutely.
so
No, I
that's where
agree.
they approached, the squad approached the township. We all sat down, it took us years. We all
Many
sat
years.
down and said, okay, this will probably be the best solution.
Correct.
Okay, and we all agreed to it. But like Joe's saying, and I'm not putting the squad down, they're doing a fantastic job, and yes, the billing is very profitable for them. But the same token, the township should also benefit in some way, shape, or form from that billing,
From the building.
from the billing.
Well, as I understand it, they're purchasing equipment that we would have funded in the past through the taxes.
Okay?
So
Now,
by them purchasing it, they're saving us the money on the equipment.
but we're getting into a much deeper discussion, because as Joe stated, what happens when all the equipment is in the squad's name and nothing is in Tabernacle Township's name?
Peter, if the township's giving money to the squad, and it's going into the same checkbook as everything, if it were to dissolve, where would the equipment go, ultimately?
Well, there's a case called the CI case, which is a New Jersey Supreme Court case, that says basically that the volunteer fire company in that circumstance, and an analogous circumstance here, the volunteer emergency squad's equipment, resources, trucks, and so forth, to the extent that they are purchased with assets which have been either donated to them by the township or donated to them by the residents, that they hold those assets in a constructive trust for the benefit of the donee in those circumstances being the township and the township's residents. So, in the CL case, the company was not able to make good on a threat to take the firefighting equipment, the trucks and so forth, and sell it or dispose of it elsewhere through gifting it or whatever. They had to turn it over to the municipality because it was held in constructive trust. And again, that was based and premised upon the fact that the squad, the fire company, had survived solely on donations from the township and the community. That predates this billing situation. So there's no black and white answer as to how does that change the circumstance. If you look at the tenets of the decision and what underpins a constructive trust, the argument could be made that it's derived from the franchise, which is gifted to them by the township and thereby subject to the constructive trust. It could get muddied, though, if there's revenue from other sources that go into the purchase of those assets. Then that undermines the theory that the donee is the municipality or the municipality's residents exclusively and therefore held in constructive trust for their benefit. So to the extent that billing is derived from other activity, the argument, I guess, could be made that, well, that vitiates the constructive trust. We have an independent ownership interest in this. How that comes out, I don't know. But in general, if in fact it's purchased with assets derived from the municipality or from the residents through fund drives, basically donations or tax dollars, that's held in constructive trust for the benefit of the community. My hunch is that you'd have to show a fair amount of additional revenue from other sources to claim an ownership interest that usurped the constructive trust. But I don't know what those numbers are. I think that if you're deriving a few $1,000s from adjacent communities based on mutual aid, and that's into the money that went in to purchase it, it's probably still most of the money derived from the township's donations and donations from the residents. Is your earning of billing income also derived from the township or the township's residents by virtue of giving you that franchise? Or is that independent money that the independent nonprofit has earned and derived through their own operations that then usurps the constructive trust? That there's no answer to that. There is no case on that. My argument would be that you exist at the pleasure and provide that service at the pleasure of the governing body and the municipal residents in effect. And so that billing franchise is their franchise and should inure to their benefit, and therefore the constructive trust would attach. But again, that only comes up in the case where the squad is wanting to make a disposition of that property that might be contrary to the interests of the residents or the committee, which is hard to believe would that would happen or it could be an issue. So I don't think it ends up being an issue from a practical standpoint. I can't imagine their property being utilized at variance with the interests of the township. But I suppose they could make an argument that it should be able to be and that they have an independent ownership interest if enough of the income that went to the purchase or into their operating budget comes from sources outside of Tabernacle's taxpayers. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I understand.
It's a gray area.
Of course. You could have said gray area, we all
Yeah.
did, but 5 minutes ago.
I have to use at least 1,000 words.
It's a huge gray area.
Lawyer thing.
But at the end of the day, they're all Tabernacle residents and they're gonna be here.
All right. Do we have any more questions on this? If not, I'm going to close old business. We'll go to resolutions. Resolution 2017-41, introduction of the 2017 municipal budget. Hearing date and time would be April 24th, 2017 at 7:30 p.m. Do I have a motion?
I'll make it.
Motion by Mr. Barton.
No, Mr. Frank.
Francis,
Oh, Mr. Franzen, I'm sorry.
second.
Seconded by Mrs. Brown.
Joe, I just had a question. Mr. Henry gave us a schedule for the proposed changes that don't match up with April 24th. He has us introducing the budget tonight, and it says a revised date of 4/21, Terry? Should that be 4/24?
I guess what you have right in front of you.
It's this document here.
Yeah, it should be,
It says, adoption.
Which one was,
This one here.
Should be that, could that be 424?
421 is the state date, not ours.
But since we're meeting right after,
Or it's the meeting immediately following that
okay,
date.
okay, I understand, thank you.
Since we're introducing it tonight, we can extend that.
So we're okay with 424?
Yes, we are.
Without being violation of any state?
Yes.
That's all I had, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Barton.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Franzen.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Yates.
Yes. Resolution 2017-42, authorize approval of raffle license for the Church of the Holy Eucharist. Peter, I think you need to step in on this one.
As I am also often called to do, and explain the rule of necessity. The courts have imposed, or not imposed, but created a rule of necessity, which is disfavored, but necessary at some times. And what they've said is that on issues of local concern, perfunctory issues of local concern, like a raffle permit or parade license, things that are totally within the province and involving only Tabernacle, should there be a conflict of interest, as there is in this case, where a number of the committee members are parishioners and thereby would be conflicted in their interest as a personal interest in voting, the rule of necessity is invoked and that conflict is waived and they're compelled to vote, given the local nature of the issue at hand.
Well, with that being said, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Brown. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Barton. Roll call?
Mr. Barton.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Franzen.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Yates.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I could have explained that in twice as many words, but
You did good.
Could we have a brief discussion on this, Mr. Yates? This comes up with the churches every year. Is this something we could do by ordinance to avoid having to do these, or do we want to do these as a matter of formality every year?
I think the raffle ordinance, Madam Clerk, requires a local governing body action through the ABC, or?
It can be done by ordinance, but the governing body has to adopt an ordinance.
So the ordinance can do an ordinance on granting,
Well, raffles, correct.
right, yeah, to permit
Allow the
raffles,
clerk
period.
To sign off on that,
Mhm.
rather than going through the governing body. But it's always been the pleasure of the governing body to,
All right, so it's the special liquor license that requires an action by the governing body then, okay. All right.
So you would be doing this for all the raffles?
jingles and raffles.
So you would, so the committee would see none of them after this?
Well, if the governing body decides to do an ordinance, allowing the clerk to handle the procedures for licensing.
So that means anybody, if we did such a thing, anybody and everybody could have a raffle.
If they meet certain criteria.
Correct. They would have to be, they would go through the clerk's office
we wouldn't.
instead of the
You
governing
wouldn't say
body.
it. It would make it a clerk's application process. It would be handled administratively as opposed to by the committee.
Is this something that maybe we can talk at a work session in the future? Is it something that would be worth doing rather than dealing with these a half a dozen times a year?
I prefer to see them.
Okay.
That's just me. And it kind of gives the public, although we don't have a lot of public all the time, it gives them a chance to know what's going on too. Otherwise, it's something that no one would really
Sure.
know.
Okay, so everybody go out there and get your raffle tickets.
Okay, moving along. 2017-43, authorized placement of temporary signs in the public right-of-way for Tabernacle PTA.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Brown, seconded by Mr. Franzen. Roll call, please.
Could we have a little discussion, Joe? I see.
You want
Do
some-
we
sure,
know where
we
the
have
signs are going?
discussion.
I see the intersections, and Doug, do they know the criteria for the site triangle where to put these so that they don't interfere with traffic?
Code enforcement will double check that
Okay.
after they're up and make the movements if required.
Okay, thank you. Because these are all major intersections.
For for the most part, if they've done it before, we're usually in pretty good shape.
Roll call.
Thank you. Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Yates?
Yes. Moving on to new business. Doug, you want to have some discussion on the proposed public works facility?
We've talked about in the building subcommittee, in the past, we've talked about what are we going to do with this site. And the options that are out there lead to leaving this site as the municipal center in a couple different configurations, but they all pretty much center on that Public Works will no longer be part of this location. And that's the reason Public Works is being tentatively looked at to be moved. Whether we put an addition on this building to accommodate, whether we reuse the Public Works garage and put an addition on that for office space, and reconfigure the parking area and remove the annex. Those options are still in the discussion stage. What we have been working on is possible locations for Public Works to move. We've looked at a site on Route 532. There are some issues with zoning on that site, so we started to look at other sites that were available. We have discussed before the possibility of Crickett's Mill Park. We've talked about the landfill coming off the backside. We have some virgin ground on the backside of the landfill that would front Oakshade Road as another possible site. And after some discussions between the mayor and the fire chief, this concept came as another possibility, and that's what it is. We've been to Pinelands to talk preliminary about a few different sites, this being one of them. The mayor wanted me to bring this forward. We are working within the present setback. Am I correct here?
Yeah, we're, with respect to the fire station site, they've had obviously over the years several additions. There is a wetlands buffer that's been established for those prior applications, which we're working within with this conceptual plan that we prepared, which is the first plan there. Pinelands, when we met with them, indicated that they may or may not honor that buffer, and they're looking into it to let us know whether they would allow us to continue to use that buffer that was previously established, or perhaps give us a more stringent buffer. So we've not heard back from them on that yet. So what we did was we just prepared kind of a sketch of what the possibilities were on that site, with respect to the public works needs.
And where we are, we're working on both sides of the road. We're working at 81 Hawkins Road and 76 Hawkins Road. Both existing facilities that would be torn down, and 40 by 80 shop will be put up on the 81 Hawkins Road site, essentially in the same location as the community center is now. And the 40 by 80 shed will be put in the location where the original firehouse is located. These are both conceptual plans, and they need to go back to Pinelands to see whether they fit. The combination of both sites gives us slightly more acreage than we have right this minute. We have 3/4 of an acre on the community center side, and There are about 3 acres total on the site at the firehouse side. We would be probably using about an acre.
Maybe a little
Little
about
less.
an acre, a little less.
Acre, a little less, we'd be at the far end. We'd be establishing a salt dome there. The recycling drop-off would move down there, and inside storage for equipment, along with some outside storage for equipment, and that's where our yard would be. During a storm, that would be a concentration in the yard. The garage and the offices would be on the community center side, and we would relocate our existing shed that we have next to the Public Works garage down there at the far end. Pretty much limit that site to the parking area and building area right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. There's kind of 26 parking spaces.
Yeah, that's the parking that would be on the firehouse site.
On the
That's
fire-
the parking that would remain for the
Firehouse. That's an issue.
Yeah, it is,
Um,
because that's a polling place.
Yep. That's an issue, but to reduce, to gain another row would almost negate the ability for us to function within that yard. But this is one of the alternatives, and like we said, we put the conceptual plan to go back to, together to go to Pinelands to see whether the buffers work. It does limit the parking for the firehouse and the polling place to essentially 21 spots, plus the spots they have along their fence along the 206 side, which are not denoted in this plan. So there's probably, I'm going to say 8, maybe 8 spots along the fence, and a normal, give or take, 1 or 2. There's not a lot there, but so that would put you in around 30 spots. 36.
30, there's 26 shown on the plans, plus 8 would be about 34.
35 spots, somewhere in that place. And we would establish a handicap spot up next to the firehouse in this concept also. It doesn't give us a great more room than what we have now, but it is on a site that we own. And that was probably the driving force of why it was proposed, I'm going to say. We have written off the other sites because they're in residential areas. This is also on the edge of a residential. It's at the very divide where commercial ends and residential starts. The advantage of this is the cost. We're not purchasing property.
Right.
And to tear down the buildings is much cheaper than purchasing property. It also moves that your community center would be anticipated to be either in our old garage over here, where I know there's ongoing discussions with the Board of Education concerning a new purpose of the library and portions of either one of those schools that may lend itself to a community center. I'm not part of those discussions, but I know the mayor is, so I'm gathering that has some of the input on why we would be taking down the community center at this point.
So Doug, these two plans go together. Can you tell us what the use of the different buildings would be?
Certainly. The 40 by 80 building on the community center side would be a 3-bay garage and an office area, similar to what we have now. The relay coated shed would hold the majority of our small equipment. And And the 40 by 80 shed on the fire company side would be a pole barn type structure that would not be heated and would be used for truck and equipment storage, large equipment storage.
Housing the trucks.
Yes. We don't anticipate getting every truck in, but the majority of them should. And
The dumpster pad, is that for recyclables?
that's for the recyclables. We have 4 dumpsters right now for cardboard and bottles and cans. We would move the container that we collect electronics in down there also. So that's where that would move from this site down to there. There's positive negatives on that. It does have a little more exposure to the highway and transient traffic going through, so we are a little concerned over what gets left at the gate in the evening as compared to in the center of town. But no matter where we go, that's going to be an additional concern since we're not in the center.
Does this 40 by 80 proposed shed that you're showing on the side where the fire company is, what's that going to be, open on both sides?
No, that will be with closed, with either overhead doors or sliding doors. Most likely overhead.
Doug, the
On
recycling,
one side or both?
One.
the recycling is here, Doug. Does the county pick up from that recycling?
Yes, they do.
Okay. So
I'm
this,
sorry, the 25 foot behind,
Yeah.
we're using that as a driveway to circle around to deliver trucks, to take deliveries
For the salt?
for the salt.
Okay.
if we were concerned about parking at the firehouse, Doug, when we do a conceptual plan for this property, could those dumpsters stay here and people would come here and drop off the recyclables? Does it have to be attached to Public Works?
It does not have to be attached to Public Works. I'm not sure if you want them mixed with the rest of the administrative use here. That's more of a concept than.
If it wasn't here, how many more parking spaces could we get another 15 parking spaces out of that?
Probably another 15 if we slid that fence line over towards the 40 by 80 shed. We could get another row in the middle there probably. And there is a little bit more room around the back of the building, but there's a drive that runs back to the trash enclosure, so we may be able to reconfigure things there a little bit and pick up a few more spaces.
Or Dan, could you take this and put it back in this corner here and be able to access it off of these driveways?
Sorry, Joe, I can't see that far.
Could you take this and put it in this corner
Yeah.
and access it from here and gain some parking at maybe eight spaces here?
You might be able to gain a few there. It's on an odd angle there, which makes it difficult.
Yeah.
Again, this is sort of a kind of a rough, conceptual type plan. And again, we're waiting to hear back from Pinelands on what that buffer is going to be, because that could change things significantly.
And this is the delineated buffer here?
Right now, as it stands, that's the woods line that we can't really go much beyond. The buffer's a little bit beyond that.
Okay.
But we need to reserve a little bit of that for dealing with stormwater management.
That's why I was going to ask you, what about stormwater once we do this?
Yeah, we have a little room in that wooded area there for that, but again, we didn't want to get too far into that until we get determination on that buffer.
And how about on the community center site? What about stormwater there? Would you be able to incorporate that to stormwater that's at Yates Plaza at all?
Well, the plan there was to stay within the developed area as it stands. So really, we're replacing the existing building with that new building, and then the shed is for the most part located on the existing stone. So there's not a lot of room for stormwater management there. There is a little bit of that wooded area that you see. There's also a septic system there between the woods line and the relocated shed that obviously we can't do anything on. But we're leaving ourselves a little bit of room there. That's why we did try to put the salt dome over.
Will we have to do new septic on this site, Dan?
Potentially, depending on what the overall square footage of the property and the use is.
A couple of questions. Employee parking. You have 6 spots and 1 handicap?
Yeah.
Is that enough?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, we're just using the existing property there, but you can see you've got that whole stone area. We've got a little more room on the other side of the shed, and there's room across the street. The only way to make this work is to use both sites on either side of the street. So some folks would have to park across the street.
Well, I understand where Joe's going with this to try and increase things. The zoning on this, doesn't this fall underneath the Metro Farms requirements?
Yes.
Where you need to go 10-foot sideline?
The only situation that if we move it beyond that, we have a 75-foot buffer between commercial and residential. I don't know whether that kicks in or not.
Well, beyond that, again, we're trying not to develop on what is now grassed areas or lawn areas. We're trying to stay within the existing development. So that building is set back approximately what the existing community center building is. So I'm trying not to expand any impervious surfaces.
Well, I understand what you're saying on the new building, but you've got where we have the relocated shed. That should
Same
be-
concept, the existing stone parking area doesn't extend all the way to the property line there. So for the same reason, we're trying to hold it, for the most part, within the existing stone area.
Yeah, but I mean,
That also gives us some area to put some retention areas if required, and that is the low end of the property. So I'm assuming if Pinelands requires us to do some additional, that we can do it behind there and bring it around towards Hoffman Road. And keep our retention down at that end.
up towards the front end of Hoffman.
Yeah, on the back side of the plaza.
I'll be anxious to see what Pineland says about it. I think it's a, very good preliminary plan, and I congratulate Dan for putting it together. Just a quick comment on the parking. I share everyone else's opinions on that, but one thing I didn't hear us talk about is now it seems to me when there are big events, perhaps such as a voting day, that people park on both sides of the street. So I think ultimately when Pineland says something about parking, and I'm sure they will, seeing this, but I think, one thing that we do have is that parking can be on both sides of the street here. I mean, we've seen that so many times already, and that could be doable, and perhaps something could be done around behind the building. But I think the next real step after having now seen this is to wait and see what Pineland says about it, and go forward from there.
We're going to be reaching out to them to try to shake an answer out of them on the buffer, and then we'll have a little bit better idea when we have to vote. But at least it's a start.
Yeah, I think it's nice. After all these years, I'm glad to see it. We've made some progress.
Okay. Any other questions on this? All right, let's move on to reports. Hello.
I thought that following the budget was bad.
Did you bring me my blue flashlight?
Following a plan, discussion of a plan, I don't get to look at it.
Think get me a blue one.
No, sorry, it's gonna be
That's
night,
purple.
it's gonna be night and we're gonna have a storm, so I am flashlight for it. Storm, there's gonna be snow. Public Works is prepared, they're coming in at noon, at midnight, and they'll work until they can't work anymore, which ought to be about noon tomorrow. The fire company has got a duty crew in, and they've checked all their equipment and everything, and they're prepared to do whatever they have to do. The rescue squad has come in, they've checked their equipment, they're gonna bring people into the house at midnight. They're gonna stay until 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, we'll feed breakfast to the Public Works, and anybody from the fire company, anybody from the rescue squad, and the EMS bill. We've done a swift 911 call to the community. I know it went out because I was sitting back there. I've been getting calls from community, from residents saying, is it really going to snow, or is it really going to be that bad? And I tell them, don't listen to TV. Tell you, we have no idea how it's going to happen. I am hesitant. I listened to the call from Atlantic City Electric today, who said, don't worry, we've got everything covered. We've got plans in place. We're not going to have a big problem. All the snow's going to be north. I'm hesitant to say anything like that, to say that we got it covered, that we are as prepared as we can be. We're going to have snow. We will open the EOC at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. The county opens their EOC at 6. At that point, we will just do what we normally do. Any questions about the storm? It's going to snow. You know, I went through a diatribe last meeting about some of the things I've learned in my short stint as being an emergency person. There's two things that I left off. One of which is serendipity is a wonderful thing. You know, serendipity is when you have good plans and they work by accident. And the other is that there's no good horse that's too dead, you can't kick it a little bit more. And that's the one I particularly enjoy. And in the serendipity column comes this letter that came from the JIF. And it's to the mayor and the council, 2016 Safety Incentive Program Awards. I'm going to read this because there is a provision here that asks that it actually be read to the township committee so it gets into the public record. Not because I like to read or I like to exercise my reading skills. It's our pleasure to report the Township of Tabernacle has earned $1,650 as a result of your employees' outstanding performance 2016 Borough Safety Initiative Program. The Safety Initiative Program is intended to foster a safety attitude among Borough JIF members, change behaviors, create a safer working environment, as well as promote continuing efforts to change the culture. The awards were announced at safety coordinators and claim coordinators regional training held on February 23, 2017, and will be celebrated during the annual safety kickoff breakfast scheduled for April 2017. The Safety Incentive Program required the execution of a safety contract and the completion of various reports confirming compliance with JIF safety criteria. You'll remember we did a contract. Remember we've done a contract every year. Parallel that contract is a form that we put together to say when we're going to do safety inspections. Also parallel with that are things called job site observations where supervisors look at the performance of their employees to critique or to help them with safety considerations. That's done by the fire company, the rescue squad, Public Works, the CERT. We all do this thing, and it's all part of the safety program. Should I talk to lost? During 2016, members competed against a set of standards established by the Executive Safety Committee to determine their awards. The JIF members were sorted into 4 categories: small, medium, large, extra large, based upon their annual JIF assessment. Each member competed against the established standards to determine if they either qualify or do not pass, fail for a safety incentive award program. Due to your employees' efforts, Tabernacle Township qualified, passed for a reimbursement of $1,650 to be used for the recognition of your employees' safety accomplishments. I emphasize that because that's exactly what we do with it. Either a picnic or maybe a flashlight. We ask that this letter be read at the next council meeting to acknowledge the efforts of your employees. The safety program is one of those things that's unsung, that sits down from the back quarter, that takes care of those things. We have an employee that gets hurt, albeit a JIF member, rescue squad of the fire company. It takes care of their medical bills, it takes care of them. In the meantime, it forces us to look at the safety issues that face our employees. They do risky things. We intend for them to do risky things, and we do intend for them to do risky things on purpose. What we will not tolerate is that they do it in an unsafe manner as much as we can. And that we use unsafe incidents or actual events, accidents or things like that, as a teaching tool so it won't happen again. I have done presentations to the squad, I have done presentations to the fire company, and I have done presentations to the CERT and Public Works about different things that relate to safety for their consideration. For example, crush zone, that type of thing. So, if I have questions, that's what's going on with the safety program. An interesting thing that we've done, and this is absolutely fascinating. Some of the municipalities that are in the GIF in the local area, and that would include Tabernacle, Chemung, Medford Lakes? No. Southampton, Hainesport, Lumberton, that's all of it, are decided we all needed to do one of these safety picnics and wellness days and that type of thing. And we're all not necessarily happy with the turnout from our employees or the people that should be going to it. And so we've developed a lot of resources into this thing. So what we decided to do is we would do one together. And we're going to do this on the 23rd of May in Medford. It was so interesting because we're talking about changes in culture here too. And one of the changes in culture is Chemung and Tabernacle have a volunteer-centric workforce, meaning that the bulk of their workforce are volunteers, as opposed to Medford, which has more full-time employees. So the way they look at things was from a full-time perspective, and the way we look at things might be from the volunteer perspective. So that means that we had changes in the hours. So the hours of this thing are based on availability to full-time as well as volunteers. The other thing we looked at is let's bring in the families, because families have an impact upon the health and the welfare, if you will, of the employee. If an employee is working healthy, then maybe that employee who happens to be a fireman won't have a heart attack, which is the #1 killer of firemen. So what's the balance? Well, the family probably has something to do with it, so we open this thing up here for families. Next year, depending on how it goes, we may open it up to seniors. In the past, Medford's opened it to seniors, Tabernacle has not. Maybe we should. So, that's something else to look at. That's where we get more experience at. That it is, you're invited. You all are, from our perspective, you are employees of the township. You are invited to this thing. Having it done together with Medford is another example of some of the kinds of things that we're doing off-site that people don't really realize. I mentioned the fact that Medford runs the shelter in the event of an emergency. We support that shelter. I mentioned the fact that we have to do the point of distribution for pharmaceuticals, and Medford Lakes, and other townships are part of that, but we're on the blame line for it. So that balance makes some kind of logical sense, especially when we're dealing with this thing. Now, it's interesting. Any questions about that? Last item. This is one of my favorite things. And we're having a snowstorm. The last time we had a snowstorm that was serious was January 2016. After the snowstorm was over, based on a lot of effort done by some emergency management people, it was declared an emergency by the president. March, it was declared an emergency. 2 months after the snowstorm. Somewhere in there, we did all the paperwork. We submitted it, and it was accepted, and the process is approved. And we got the payment, notification of the payment, last Friday for the storm last year of $22,000. It's fascinating. It has to take a year. There's a piece of it that's still out, and that's the piece of the donated resources. But it's interesting. Sometimes the wheels of FEMA don't ride as fast as you think they might. But we got $22,000. Any questions about that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Doug, I have a question for you. Would any part of what Colonel Lowe just presented to us, would any part of that fall underneath the shared services, since there's so many towns involved?
We're all JIF members, and we're doing it as a JIF,
That's correct.
as a JIF. I don't know if it would gain any importance or any benefit to do it as a shared service.
And everything I just talked about, we all pick up our piece of whatever the action is, our piece of the action.
We're all working.
So it's all working together.
We're all
Whether you're
working-
talking about the pod or you're talking about the Cherville shelter. This JIF thing is particularly that way. For example, as I saw something today that Lumberton is going to pay for the smoothie machine.
Oh, no, that's Southampton.
Southampton's going to pay for the
Yeah,
smoothie
I'm working
machine.
on that.
Tabernacle's going to pay for all the pokey bacon. All right,
Chemung and Medford have reflexology and the chair massages.
so,
So we're all taking our funds that we get generated from the JIF for our participation and using them as a portion and combining them all to make it work for a larger event.
I just didn't know because there's so many communities coming together in one location that they fall underneath of any form of shared service. But I do
It is under a shared service because the JIF is a shared service.
That's what I was gonna say, Doug,
Yeah.
is that I would consider the JIF a shared service and the rest of it, even under OEM, there's a mutual aid agreement amongst fire, EMS, OEM. I think the shelter falls under that.
So,
And that was Kathy Berger, Woodside Drive.
manager of Medford Township.
Okay, moving along. Mr. Guzzi.
Nothing else this evening.
Douglas.
The only other thing I have is we received a letter from Burlington County Engineering and Highway Department, or direct from the Director of Public Works, concerning an incident that happened down at the entrance to Seneca High School last year. And they would like to meet with both us and the Regional High School District to discuss possible changes. So,
County road or?
County, well, Fox Chase Road is ours that comes out. Right. And they're, and 648, Brands Road is theirs in front of the school. So, Joe would like to quickly, the Director of Public Works and the County Engineer, would like to meet to talk about possible improvements.
So Doug, the entrance to the school is Fox Chase Road, that's ours,
That's ours.
all the way back to the ball field?
Yes.
Did we maintain that, or does the school maintain that?
In the original agreement, they maintain the striping and the signage, we maintain the snow removal.
Yeah, I read the letter from Joe Berkeley, that was a very long letter.
Yes.
And he had the history. Do you have any ideas about how to improve that?
I mean, the request from the resident who was involved in the collision there was that we go to a traffic light. I'm not sure, Joe would have the numbers better than I would, but I don't believe the volume warrants it, but I can understand if you've been anywhere near that at morning or afternoon time, why you would think that. It probably needs a traffic light desperately for a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the afternoon,
Right.
and the rest of the time it could be blinking, but I don't know whether that structure could be set up as that way. You know, Shawnee, the light used to have a turn arrow on it, it no longer does. I'm not quite sure why that is, and I know that works all the time. I don't, it may blink in the summer, but I don't, no, it works all the time.
There's a left turn arrow.
Does it?
Yes, it does.
Does it? They did away with it for a while, they brought it back?
It's
been there forever. Been like that forever.
Maybe the bulb was burnt out.
I don't know. What would they like to make with it?
Yeah, with the, with the new sensors, they don't do the loop sensors anymore, right? They actually, they're a camera sensor, right? So if there was a car coming out of the school, it could operate, so it couldn't be a working light, just leave it green on Corinza Road until there was a car present.
That may be, but there'll be some cost sharing in that.
Yeah, so that was my next question, is that on the county because it's a county road?
No,
Is it
it's
shared
not
because
completely, it's because it's a municipal road meeting it. There will be some share process in it, and it would behoove us to talk to the district, since it's their traffic,
Yeah.
what they could share in that, as they've shared in the road.
We
did pass the backwards problem.
Still remains a paper road going through, right?
No, it's been abandoned. There is a utility easement of 25 foot that runs all the way across there still.
We still own that.
We own that road at each, we own Fox Chase at each end, and the availability of the utility easement in the middle.
And what I'm getting at is we own Fox Chase all the way up to the stadium.
Yes.
Wow. I just got educated. I thought that was the,
But they maintain the striping and the signage. And they paved it. We do the snow removal. Yeah.
so when would they like to meet?
They did not have a date, something that I don't know who wants to meet with. The letter came to the mayor and it was CC'd to me. I don't know whether you want to whether the subcommittee would like to meet, or whether the mayor wants to meet, or they want to send me. I'm not sure what you want to do. Whatever suggestion you have.
Sounds like the mayor's on top of this, so why don't we wait until Mr. Lee comes back and see what input he has about this.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and I do see the state police there on major events like football games and other events, controlling it. That driveway, called it driveway, it's actually a street, I wasn't aware it was a street, I thought it was part of the school's driveway.
That's what I thought.
Coming in and out of there.
And it's still Fox Chase Road.
Okay. Anything else, Doug?
Nothing else.
Peter?
Just the executive session on that item, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Brown, ladies first.
I don't really have much. I just wanted to thank the committee for understanding the difficult time that I'm going through right now with my husband's health issues. You know, I've missed some meetings. I've offered to call in, but the committee weighs on whether they have a quorum and whether or not they want me to call in. And I really appreciate it. It's going through a very serious illness, and I appreciate everyone's understanding.
Understood.
That's it.
Mr. Franzen.
Once again, I enjoyed Colonel Lowe's presentation. Hopefully he'll have another one for us at the next meeting. And other than that, I'll pass.
Mr. Gordon.
Pass.
You pass also. Okay, I have, I believe we all received the paperwork. Doug, this is the paperwork that I asked you to present the committee with, am I correct? Sustainable Jersey?
Is that good, all the
If you remember at our last meeting, Doug brought this to our attention and stated that it quite possibly may be something that this committee would be interested in. And I asked Doug to give us this information so that we could review it. I'm not sure if everybody has had the opportunity to go through it. But Doug sounded partially excited about it. if I'm not mistaken, Doug.
It has pluses and minuses.
Right. That's why I did ask Doug to, to present this to us so we could review it and see if we are interested. Other than that, I have nothing else, so I'm going to open it back up to the public. Mr. Lowe.
Yes, sir,
I'm sorry.
this is like a saved round. The Lenape School District is closed for the month.
And Tabernacle.
And Tabernacle.
Thank you. My wife will be having. Yes, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Stuart Brooks, Mooresville Road. A very interesting presentation on the proposed public works improvements. I'd like to know how those proposals would or might impact the budget, because the budget has $500,000 in it for land purchase. Was that for an alternate site, one of the others that was proposed, but has now been rejected or supplanted? There's also money in the budget for 2019 building funds, I think in the amount of about $2 million. Is that also affected by what was discussed here for the public works improvement? Is the plan that you guys were discussing, is that available for the public to see? I would like to see it, just to get an idea what you're talking about. And plan on scene, is it possible to do some parking sharing with Yates Plaza to obviate the need for the parking spaces that seem to be necessary? Is this going to be one of those where I talk and you listen?
Well, you're going on your 3 minutes. So.
All right. Regarding TRS, yeah, we all, sincerely, we all do appreciate what they do. There are other townships who don't contribute the equivalent of our $30,000 or $35,000, who simply bill the residents. If the residents are able to pay, they accept payment, and if they're not able to pay, they write it off. So I don't think it's the case that there's a required payment that's necessary to handle the charitable billings or care that you're talking about. Other towns solve that problem. I'm not sure that that's that your concerns. I don't think that's a necessity. I didn't hear an answer to the question of how much we pay annually for the bond, either the full amount or the 50-50 amount. I know that was a question, I think, Deputy Mayor Yates, that you asked. I didn't hear an answer to that. And I do think that it's worthwhile, if not critical, to discuss not only that whole TRS discussion has lots of moving parts to it. Regarding Mr. Lang's legal opinions on what would happen to equipment bought with those funds, cutting through all of the legal uncertainty, if it's important to us to contract with the fire company to ensure that we know what happens to equipment that's bought with money, why is it no less important to have that clarity with another institution that's important to our community, namely TRS? It's craziness, with all due respect to Mr. Lang's opinion, it's craziness to say, well, we think it'll work out because we're all from Tabernacle, but we're not sure. You clarify it from the get-go so that everyone is sure, not because it's to our advantage as taxpayers or the TRS's advantage as the important agency, but to all of us, so we have clarity. Clarity is generally good.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. And you are correct, I never did get that answer. But I will. Hopefully tonight. So we'll get it.
When you get it, will we also have access to that?
Well, like I said, hopefully I get it tonight so that it's verbally stated.
Super. Thank you.
And Doug, is it possible at the present time, or do we need to, for preliminary approval from Pinelands, to make these plans accessible on our website?
You could. Again, I think it might be a little premature, only because we're not sure exactly what our constraints are going to be for Pinelands on this. This was just kind of a first go-around, but certainly if you'd like to, we can provide them electronically. Let's make sure to put a big preliminary on.
Yes, please.
Okay. Would it be okay to make these available on the table for anyone to look at after the meeting, but not take with them? Their conceptual plan we discussed?
I don't have a problem.
Okay. I would suggest, Deputy Mayor, that we just leave it set up here, and anyone after the meeting wants to take a look at the conceptual plans, knowing that we have to go to Pinelands, and it's not, you know, it's not something that we've agreed upon, it's just a start.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? Yes, sir.
Don Scherer, 218 Suey. I want to thank you, Doug, and also the council, since my wife was the one that brought up the New Jersey sustainability, and I hope you guys want to get along with like the schools did, and maybe we can get a little bit of money back into the town. And my other question was about the drawing also. I would like to see it, but now that you're making it available, I appreciate that also.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brooks, you did have your hand up,
I did.
or was it a piece of paper?
That was both attached. Fran Brooks, Morris Mill Road. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Barton and you, Deputy Mayor Yates, for bringing up the whole Tabernacle Rescue Squad issue. And perhaps you can start grappling with the issue and create a little more balance in the township with regard to payments that they make on the bond of the building, the insurance that we're covering, and some other issues that really need to be dealt with and that haven't yet been dealt with. Having said that, there's just a couple of questions I have. One, do we have a needs assessment for the Public Works facility? I mean, there hasn't been any discussion about, or any document that's been provided regarding a needs assessment for the facility. So even though you're talking about Hawken Road, maybe there are other options, and without the public knowing or anybody knowing what the needs are, how can we even move ahead as a community to decide, or you as a committee deciding whether or not the fire station property is a...
If I could interrupt, Mr. Franson, would you like to interject on that? I believe you're on that committee.
We had a facilities committee that was operational about 2 years ago, and it met with community leaders, it met with members of the township committee, with staff in this building, and it kind of went over a proposed long-range plan for space. And that was presented and discussed at a township committee meeting in December of one year. I think it was 2 years ago. And it was through that process that we looked at the whole concept of where we were with this building, what was here, Public Works, Community Center. Joe was on the committee too. And we came to some conclusions that we needed to, after we presented that to everyone, we needed to go forward. It's just been one of those things that have been on the back burner for a while. But with respect to Public Works, off the top of my head, some of the things I remember, number one is they are kind of crowded here. Number two, and I think this was a biggie for a lot of people, there's a safety issue with these trucks running in and out of here all the time. Number three, we could possibly use the building over there. And again, this is just possibilities that we're talking about, but maybe that building could have been used to create a community center if we got Public Works out of here. There was a minor problem, I remember, to a bird infestation over here at the building. They couldn't seem to conquer that. And I think there were 2 or 3 other things in that report. You may have gotten one.
I'm wondering if you're talking about this report that was presented December 9, 2013?
Yeah, that's probably it then, yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess the issue is that it doesn't seem that there's really been a needs assessment presented or even discussed. I mean, it's one thing to have a global conceptual plan, and I think it's valuable to have that, but there really needs to be a specific needs assessment, and that just doesn't seem to be coming across. And so it does seem pretty premature to be talking about these sites without having any kind of understanding of what Public Works really needs. Maybe you have it, but we certainly haven't heard it. And
well, Fran, I believe it's the overall need of the township as a whole. I mean, I mean, if you look at the annex is basically, it's too small for Mr. Boyd and Jay. Way too small right now, and it's overcrowded. Even though you only have the 3 people in there, that building is overcrowded. We have no other place to put them. So we're looking at, like you're saying, the needs of the community. We have been diligent. We have been forthgoing in looking at what those needs are of the community and from an administrative standpoint. What does Doug need?
well, we don't have, as sitting in the public, you had a good discussion, but one of the first questions I had, well, how much area does Doug really need, given his equipment needs and the building that he's using now and the storage outside? There's no real refined discussion of that. The same thing, how much area does Mr. Boyd and the tax assessor really need? There's just no overall specific plan, and I don't know how you can do this piecemeal, and maybe you shouldn't be doing it piecemeal, because that's not really the way planning gets done. And so I'm saying, well, do you have this needs assessment? And it's clear, at least from my understanding of a needs assessment, it's not here. You have a need, but no exact analysis of.
That report was from 2013.
Right.
And as Mr. Francis stated, we did put it on the back burner because we had other irons in the fire.
Okay, understood, and not to belabor it, what is the timeline? And 2, is it possible that you could buy a little land off of the church and reconfigure the whole lot and still preserve this whole area? Safety-wise, I don't really know what, had there been any accidents, for example. I don't know, but these are just issues that occurred to me when listening to that discussion, and I would hope that this didn't take 3 minutes for me because there was so much discussion.
No, actually it doesn't. We're sending the courtesy.
Okay. I'm sorry, what?
No, I did stop it every time someone else spoke.
Oh, okay. Well, I do just have a couple of questions just to clear up some issues having to do with the budget, if I may ask you for just a few more seconds. When staff attends these meetings, do they get paid for these meetings? If there is, I know that if there's an issue, let's say Mr. Boyd will show up to address issues having to do with that particular issue. That seems to be really clear. But for example, when Ms. Lewis attends the meetings, does she get paid for being present at the meeting? Yes? No?
She gets comp time?
She gets comped for the time. Okay.
The director, the department heads do not.
Department heads do not. Okay. And
Follows the same rules that in the employment policy about who can receive overtime and who can't, based on that.
okay. And so when you guys are, for example, excuse me, not you guys, but the committee is discussing staff salary increases. I know that a lot of the staff do show up to sit here and look at you folks. Do they get comp time for that?
They show up on if they're not part of
people that are required to be here, no, they do not.
Okay, I just need a little clarification on that. And last year, the mayor and committeewoman Brown gave up their salaries. Is that going to continue this year? Because there was an increase in the salaries in the budget from 15, I think, to 23, something like that. So are they going to be continuing to waive their salaries? Is that under discussion?
That is a decision they have to make. That is not a question I'm going to have for either one of them. So that would be something that they would have to decide on their own, if they're giving up their salary again.
Okay, but as for the public information, in public being informed of that, what is the status of that since there was an increase in the salaries?
It would reflect in the approved budget.
Okay, so then someone it's gone up by at least 5,000, so someone is bringing their, taking the
Not
salary down?
necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Well, guys.
I'm not taking the salary.
Okay, well, that's all people have to say.
I'm not taking the salary, that's simple.
That's right, it is that simple. It's touchy, but it's that simple. It makes things.
Not touchy for me, it's
Good,
fine.
that's good. I appreciate that, committee woman, I really do. I guess, I mean, there are other questions about the budget, like why is it that the fire company is still being given $90,000 when they're expended, when they only encumbered $67,000?
Two different accounts.
No,
You're talking two
I don't have it with me,
accounts. 90,000 is the one they're given to run their operation.
Okay.
60,000 is a line items that come out of our budget.
I realize, yes, I know, but I'm actually talking about the contribution, the township's contribution. Last year, it was for 2016.
That was
right.
because the check didn't go until January. It wasn't put on in December.
Oh, okay.
So it was given the first.
Mrs. Brooks, thank you for
You're very welcome. Thank you for your patience.
Anyone else from the public?
I appreciate it.
Mrs. Berg?
Hi, Kathy Berger, 18 Woodside Drive. I wanted to tell you, I am not in favor of balance billing going away. I think for those that are on a fixed income or need charity, I believe in it. What I would ask though, is I came before the committee probably a year or two ago when Southampton did their EMS bid, and they put in there that they do a contribution in lieu of monetary. They do insurance, gasoline, and something else. And that's what is their contribution. I just want to know if it's legal and if it's something you want to explore. I don't care how you do it, but I don't think we should take balance billing away.
Well, you actually opened up another door for me.
Okay, well, I have the bid if you need to see it. I'll be glad to share it with you. And somewhere you could make up the difference if you wanted possibly is the contingent line item, because I see that that's at $30,000 this year, but you only spent $100 last year. So I don't know what we use that for, but.
Care houses.
Oh, okay.
They got to them before we did.
Yeah, you might need that. You might need that money then. And I was looking, the salary and wage thing, I did a rough calculation when Mr. Barton asked that question, and he is absolutely correct. It comes out to 3% for most of the line items, 5.75 in one, and of course there's a decrease in public works because you've had a change in employees. But clearly it's 3% for all other salary and wage except for administrative, which is 5.75. LoSAP, I was just looking at and didn't think that you totally needed the number. I know you're anticipating it could go up, but you were still under last year. And I didn't understand the workers' comp O&E. That's drastically less what we expended last year than what we're budgeting.
It's based on what the GIF anticipates our
Okay.
bills will be.
So did they say why such an increase over last year?
No.
Okay, just curious. And I just want to say, as a township clerk, I want to say that my governing body did give me the ability to approve, my office to approve bingos and raffles. Nothing changes. You are going by the same criteria that you always have when you do it. It's just the clerk can actually do it prior to a governing body meeting, which just speeds the process up for the applicant. And they start their 14-day waiting period at the state. And then I just turn around and I report at the next council meeting what ones I've approved. So you're still in the loop. It's something that is nice for the applicant. It helps because of that waiting period. And depending on how long your background takes. Ours is 6 to 8 weeks, so it definitely helps them get through a little faster. And I just want to make a comment about the fire budget. There was a comment made that at the last, that we've reduced it by some. When the fire district last had it, they were still making mortgage payments and payments on 4314. So when the township took that budget over, those payments had ceased. So that was automatically coming down then. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Hearing none, we'll close it to the public.
Mr. Yates, before you consider the executive session motion, I was expecting Mr. Lee to be here. I am seeking for the committee to make a decision with respect to certain issues concerning the Long Street property. The Long Street property, you know, has been a problem property given its condition. And due to the recent death of Mr. Longstreet, the administration is now of the estate is in possession of the property, and they've made an offer to the township regarding the property and in conjunction with the back taxes on the property. So I will be looking for the committee to respond to that offer, and if we don't believe that the consensus for that can be achieved without Mr. Lee, or that it's more appropriate to wait for him, then that's fine. I expected that he was going to be here tonight. I didn't know that we would be without him again. There's no deadline, you know, there's certainly an ability to wait another meeting. Ultimately, though, I'd like to get back to their attorney with respect to that offer, and that's what I wanted to discuss with you in executive session. But if you don't feel that the committee is going to make a decision without Mr. Lee, then, you know, I would be wasting your time tonight.
Sounds like the consensus of the committee, they want to wait.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Terry, were you able to come up with that number for me?
The, what we're paying for just that,
Yes, for the emergency services bill.
roughly 280,000
280,000 a year.
this year. The rates change every year.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it.
Did they cancel?
I'm like, I said, I'm gonna just come back. This guy's coming from Berkeley. He's like, I'll let you come in, you know?
Wow.
Just stay up.
The snow totally down.
What are you drinking?
I just sold out.
Vodka?
Have a good one.
You're letting me before you go on the offering. I don't know.
Doing all right? Good, good. I'm through all this nonsense. We accept our budget meetings. It's the council budget right now. It's been our way for probably 5 years. We have a weeknight one, and we have a Saturday. Yeah, we have a weeknight and a Saturday. So we kind of hash all that out that way. And you know, nobody from the public comes, but they can.
Got it.
Throwing stuff on the plastic, can it fit? You have a chance?
I can't say.
Literally. The lines are sharp.
I'm ready to up for tonight.
Night, ladies.
Good night.
Check out Friends Road. There is no question that those other roads.
You know what, the Carranza is a good candidate for DOT funds.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
The local roads aren't good candidates for DOT funds.
DOT has another program that's based on, and they give out money.
They give out money to some parts of local roads, country roads, but the bottom line is that's about huge.
Because it's a longer road too, so.
Just a mile and a quarter, that is so bad.
No, I understand it being bad, but the idea is if you do DOT, you face it.
Most of these roads, I would say that Morse Meadow is actually worse than all of those.
And I'll get back to
All of those roads.
I'll call you
That
back
is
here.
dangerous down to the
I signed these.
There is a single road on that listing.
It's the same need that's being addressed.
Well, that's 2 miles that you're doing.
Yeah, but certain roads, depending on how bad the road is, like more curved. I don't decide which road.
Maybe in the 18 road program, right? My road program has changed 3 times since we started it.
Every year, ladies.
Yep, good night. Yeah, it really did. It just keeps changing.
Good night, sir. Good night.
I would have covered on it because you used keywords that make me go, okay. Like dangerous. And hazardous. Yeah, definitely. I know. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
All right. Take care. I will talk to you.